So what you're about to see is from Rebel Base, IGN's weekly Star Wars thing.
Okay, so we've talked about bad guys in the last couple of weeks. Bad guys are fun to talk about, but we've sort of been focusing on the biggies. Like
they've
the
dominated.
biggie bad guys. Exactly, the ones that everyone knows about.
We did a whole show on Darth Vader with Kieran Gillen. You know, we've got preoccupied with Vader and Dooku to an extent, and obviously the Emperor.
So this week we thought we would introduce you to 6 Star Wars baddies you've probably never heard of. Now, these are some really cool guys. I know I don't know, there's something about bad guys and bad ladies.
Yeah, by the way, we know that's 4, not 6.
Yeah.
We're not idiots.
That's fine, we just don't have 6 screens. I mean, we could have split it up, but we did, that's fine. So let's kick things off. You kick things
Bane,
off.
not that Bane,
Not
another
that
Bane,
Bane,
Darth
yeah.
Bane.
That's right, yeah.
Bane's a good name for a villain. I was reading this when we were doing the research. It's amazing how many of these have roots to evil words.
Yeah.
So Darth Bane, he was a powerful Sith Lord who kind of became, I guess, disillusioned with the Sith, which is actually kind of the inverse of the journey that you see a lot, and the most famous.
A lot.
It's the famous journey in Star Wars that goes through the episodic movies, which is the fall of, obviously, Anakin and being drawn to the dark side.
Yeah.
But even though he becomes disillusioned with the Sith, he doesn't become a Jedi.
Which you think that's what would happen.
It's almost kind of a middle way, and it's almost like he's kind of, he can't become a Jedi because obviously that's not fundamentally his worldview.
No,
But at the same time, he has a pretty low opinion of the Sith.
That's right,
what's held them back for generations.
Yeah.
And that's why he came up with the idea of the rule of 2.
I think this is amazing, yeah.
To basically reduce the numbers of the Sith Lords, because obviously the kind of passions that motivate and drive them just lead to infighting,
that's right,
insurrection and the rest. So
and because of that, that's when they become most susceptible to the rebellion then as well. And they get weak all the time. So he had enough of it and did this rule of 2. But the thing I found really interesting is his rule of 2 can be the master and the apprentice. So it's literally just him and a mate. Yeah. Going around.
Wait, why are you going down? Rule of 2.
Rule of 2. Sorry.
Can I come? No, rule of 2.
Shotgun. All the time. Yeah, he's basically invented shotgun rules.
In a galaxy far, far away.
But what's his best appearance?
Best appearance, I think we're going to go for episode 13 of season 6 of the Clone Wars, Sacrifice, where Yoda visits the Sith homeworld and sees the ghost of Bane.
Sees his ghost, and that's the thing. It's a really, really scary thing, but it shows how just brutal. It shows how brutal Bane is, but at the same time, also shows how just understanding Yoda is, because he's confronted with Bane's ghost, but even though he's a terrifying sort of thing, he's almost sort of like Smaug-like in the way that he sort of comes out. But Yoda knows he's just a ghost and he can't really do anything about it. So next up, my favourite, or one of my favourite, is Aurra Sing here. So now we see her very, very briefly in The Phantom Menace. Very, very briefly, but you don't really get a sense of who she is or what she's about. And if you read up on her, she has basically the worst childhood possible. Her mother's addicted to spice. She never knew her father, and she's sort of bandied around. She's given to slavers at one point, and then is taken because she's such an aggressive person. She's taken, and she's a really, really good fighter. She's taken to the Jedi Order, and she starts training there. And because she was a sort of almost like problem child, they give her to the mysterious Jedi Master, the Dark Woman. Which we should definitely do an entire episode on at some point. But she can't handle her because she's just too aggressive. And even while she's she's studying as a Padawan, so much bad stuff happens to her. And she ends up, at one point she ends up being captured by the Hutt. Another point she gets given to a bunch of assassins, and they train her up to be an absolute beast of a killer. And she eventually becomes Aurra Sing, the Jedi killer.
So you're blaming this all on childhood?
I'm blaming it all on a spice-addicted
Well, you know
mother,
who else had a crap childhood? Luke Skywalker. He didn't end up doing any of this stuff.
Her best appearance, for my money, is in a novel called Coruscant Night 2: Streets of Shadow, where she's tasked by Darth Vader. I don't want to call Lord Vader, he's not my lord. Where she's tasked by Darth Vader to hunt out the Jedi Jax Pavin. So she is sort of going after sort of the main protagonist of that. And she's got just the coolest quote. "Fear me, Jedi. I am Aurra Sing, Nashta, scourge of your kind. I haunt your darkest dreams. I drink Jedi blood. I nest in their guts. Your nightmares now have a name, Hierophant, and that name is Aurra Sing." What
Nice.
a badass. Ultimate badass Aurra Sing there.
Another ambiguous villain, we're going to go for Darth Malak.
Okay.
Interesting. Again, he was started off as a Jedi going on that kind of troubled journey where...
Happens all the time.
Well, that's the
The
problem.
Jedi need to like have some HR going on because so many people...
Teachers with a firmer hand.
Well, no, maybe that's not the point. I think maybe just more in control of stuff.
Yeah. What, regular one-to-ones?
Yeah.
With Master Yoda. It's very understanding.
Yeah.
Where's he going? Oh, he's visiting ghosts. Brilliant. I've got a problem right here, right now. He told me at 11 o'clock on Fridays. So he kind of got frustrated with what he perceived to be kind of passivity of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So they weren't upholding what they were meant to do in the galaxy, which is kind of be these great guardians and peace and justice, which you sometimes have to do through certain means. And, you know, make exceptions. That kind of be tough to be just.
Yeah.
And he has a very strong kind of compass when it comes to kind of issues like that, and that's kind of leads him towards the dark side.
Yeah.
Obviously, he teams up with Revan.
It's really hard though because you know you go into the sort of the Jedi Order because you know you're either identified as being like Force sensitive or like you know great warriors as well, and great warriors are often you know sort of quite aggressive, which is exactly what we saw Aurra Sing. And then you're sort of almost punished for that because you have to be a bit more understanding, a bit more control of your anger.
Yeah, I think it's like when you're kids, like you perceive Star Wars to be, you know, it's said all the way through the language of the film, you know, coming to the dark side.
Yeah.
And people kind of paint it or as this kind of mythological text where it's good and evil. But the more that you watch Star Wars, the more that you see that it is this kind of spectrum of politics and positions.
Huge, yeah.
And probably Expanded Universe stuff delves into that more about how these people have different vested interests.
Yeah.
And it becomes more about which side of the ideological divide. And some of these villains are basically people who don't maybe fit into the neat sides on any one side.
That's right, yeah.
And they kind of drift back and forth. Same with the bounty hunters.
Yeah.
They don't really have 2 feet in either camp.
No.
And it's much more interesting and convoluted than that. And what's also just quite a menacing look, it's almost reminiscent a bit of Vader, but it's actually quite disgusting that he had that kind of his jaw severed by Revan when he kind of implied that he was a bit soft.
Yeah.
So he took off his jaw with a lightsaber. Pretty grim.
So what's his best appearance then?
I think you want to go back to the source, which is Knights of the Old Republic.
Man, Knights of the Old Republic is so good. We need to do another episode just on Knights of the Old Republic.
Play all
through.
through.
Yeah. I'd love to play that again. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got next then Grand Admiral Thrawn, or Mithran Nurado. Mithran Nurado.
Is that Welsh?
It's not far off Welsh actually, but he's one of the Chiss. He is the sort of blue-skinned, sort of almost human, but not quite human. Yeah, exactly. And he served in the Imperial Navy, and is actually one of the only non-human to make Grand Admiral, even though they've got a really, really strict non-human policy. But he was spending a lot of time in the unknown regions and basically doing what the Emperor was doing, but in the unknown regions. So he's sort of going around and you know getting loads of people to the Force, getting loads of people to their sort of army and recruiting people like that, while the Emperor is doing all this stuff in the known galaxy. So when the Emperor falls, he then has this giant force, and basically the rebellion pretty much think they're onto a winner until Thrawn comes back with this absolute force that he's been you know cultivating in the unknown regions, and he's just known as like one of the biggest badasses in the Imperial Navy, which is really, really cool.
So one of the more kind of removed, manipulating villains.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I think like so for me, his best thing that he's done, not best appearance really, but he formed the Empire of the Hand, which I've been reading up on a lot on recently, and it's basically, he did quite a lot of good with that as well, because he was persecuted like all the time as part of the Imperial Navy. He was persecuted all the time because of his appearance, and you know because they had a really, really strict non-human policy. But because of him, like whatever bad the Empire of the Hand did, and they did a lot of bad, but whatever they did, because of him, non-humans were allowed to fly in military space, which is a massive thing for the galaxy, and actually it's quite inclusive for a really, really bad guy thing to do.
What any great dictator will tell you, you don't rule your people through fear, you make them love you.
Boom.
And they're yours forever.
Done.
That's Dictatorships 101. That's the cutout this week. So we're gonna Dirge. Do you want to know a bit about Dirge?
I'd love to know a bit about Dirge.
Great bounty hunter. Was bounty hunter for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And again, we're talking about one of these people who doesn't really have a vested interest on either side.
Yeah.
He fought Sith, he fought Jedi's, and pretty much became well versed in kicking the ass of both.
Yeah.
He ran missions for Dooku during the Clone Wars.
He just doesn't care. He'll kill anyone.
What? Take you all on. So he like mastered the moves of both orders. Ran missions for Dooku, and he was the guy that was tasked with hunting down Boba Fett.
Awesome.
Like, you got to be pretty badass if that's your job. If you think you're up to doing that.
Like to put your hand up for that mission.
Yeah, and he's also just, we haven't got a picture of him, but he's got a pretty badass look to himself. He's got this like metal suit of armor. He's a little bit Iron Man. He's got like machine guns. He's got a wrist-mounted flamethrower. He's got kind of this spiked whip thing.
That's awesome.
He's pretty well equipped. Yeah. He might not be the fastest, but he's well equipped with stuff.
He sounds like a boss in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, meets Iron Man.
Yeah, I like it.
And he's coming for Boba Fett.
What's his best appearance?
So there's a comic that you need to track back, Dark Horse comic, Star Wars Obsession #3.
Okay.
Is when he kind of confronts his kind of storyline intersects with Obi-Wan and Anakin's. And he kind of takes them both on, does pretty well, and then Anakin does what Anakin does, and he force pushes him into a sun. That's the only thing that could kill him, was being consumed by a giant ball
I'll
of
do
fire.
It. Yeah, I'll probably do it, to be honest.
Obi-Wan's like, do you think that was too much? Too much?
Well, he's been alive for hundreds of years, now he's not alive, so who knows. So finally then, we're going to end with Terranul Screed. Now, we did actually touch upon this guy last week. Eric did in his feature. And he's basically an officer of the Galactic Empire. He's known for, he was in Droids. The cartoon. He is like one of the main bad guys in that. He's one of the first admirals of the Imperial Navy, and he's basically the Emperor's like right-hand man. And although he was a celebrated like military official, his career takes a bit of a nosedive as soon as the Emperor dies, because when we've heard with Thrawn, his career sort of was on the up all the time, and even when the Emperor died, he continued to do really amazing stuff. Screed couldn't really be trusted that much, and he sort of became like a warlord and was just scrappy, sort of fighting to keep a hold of the Empire. Doesn't manage to do that, and actually is killed by another warlord, and that's how he sort of meets his demise.
That's one of the things I love about Star Wars, is the kind of the side of the Empire and just how kind of banal it is, like workplace politics and like getting promoted and stuff like that. Really, almost like Office Space, but in space. Office Space, literally.
Yeah, and because Thrawn was killed by his bodyguard, because his bodyguard found out that the Empire had killed a load of his people, and he found this out and killed him. It's just like, there's so much cool stuff like that going on, but it's like, even though it's taking place in this giant sort of space opera, really small little things happen.
And once again demonstrating the value of HR.
Exactly. Yeah. Screed's highlight for me is something you don't really see. He loses an eye defeating some Beskaren pirates, and I think you see the sort of aftermath of it all the time, because he's just a really, really angry man forever.
So those are 6 baddies that we think deserve a little bit more time in the sun. Probably not Dirge, because he's literally in the sun. But if there's anyone we missed that you really like, email us at rebelbase@ign.com.
And for everything else Star Wars, keep it right here on IGN.